In a world where talent shows have seen thousands of performers, where judges have heard every kind of voice imaginable, something extraordinary was about to happen on one unforgettable evening. The stage of America's Got Talent had seen laughter, tears, and dreams rise and fall, but never had it seen a voice like this. A 10-year-old Filipino girl, shy, soft-spoken, and humble, was about to do something that would leave the entire theater in stunned silence. Before the night was over, even Simon Cowell, the toughest critic in the world, would be on his feet, speechless, his eyes filled with something rare, admiration. This is one of those stories that begins in the simplest way, a child with a dream, standing in the shadow of a massive stage, clutching her small hands together as the lights burned bright and her heart raced faster than ever. But what she carried inside her was not just a dream. It was a voice that seemed to come from another world, a voice of pure emotion, angelic power, and breathtaking grace. Welcome back to the channel where stories of unbelievable talent, kindness, and human spirit come alive. Today, we're taking you behind one of the most beautiful moments ever witnessed on America's Got Talent, the story of a 10-year-old Filipino girl whose opera performance changed everything, reminding the world that true greatness knows no age, no boundaries, and no limits. The night was electric. The audience was buzzing with anticipation as the next contestant's name appeared on the screen, Angelina, 10 years old, from the Philippines. A tiny figure walked out onto the stage, her dress simple, her shoes slightly too big, her long black hair neatly brushed. The crowd cheered, but she didn't look up immediately. Her eyes searched for something, maybe her parents, maybe courage, and when she finally looked toward the judges, she smiled nervously. Simon Cowell leaned forward, curious. He had seen young contestants before, but there was something about this little girl's quiet confidence that caught his attention. "Hello there," Simon said with a half-smile. "What's your name?" "My name is Angelina," she said, her voice trembling just a little. "And how old are you, Angelina?" asked Heidi. "I'm 10 years old," she replied softly. 10, Howie Mandel exclaimed. "You're so young. Are you excited to be here?" Angelina nodded. "Yes, sir. This is my dream. I've watched this show since I was 6. I always told my mama one day I'll sing here." Her words melted hearts instantly. The audience began to applaud, and the little girl smiled shyly. "What are you going to sing for us tonight?" Simon asked, leaning closer. "It's an opera song," she said gently. The judges exchanged quick glances. Opera, from a 10-year-old. That was something rare, and risky. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Opera, that's a big choice for someone your age." Angelina took a deep breath. "I just want to make people feel something," she said quietly. "Even if I'm small, I want to make them believe that anything is possible." Simon looked at her for a moment, almost moved by her sincerity. "All right," he said finally. "The stage is yours." The theater fell silent. The lights dimmed. A soft orchestral melody began to play. Angelina closed her eyes. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, as the music swelled, she opened her mouth, and the first note left her lips. It was pure. It was powerful. It was impossible to believe that such a sound could come from a child. Her voice soared through the air, crystal clear, filling every corner of the theater with haunting beauty. The audience's jaws dropped. Some covered their mouths in disbelief. Simon Cowell blinked, stunned. He turned slowly to the other judges, as if to say, "Is this real?" The performance continued, each note rising higher, each emotion deeper. Her small hands trembled slightly as she sang, but her voice never wavered. It was the kind of performance that didn't just impress, it touched. Halfway through, the crowd began to cheer even before she finished. By the final note, the entire room was standing, applauding, shouting, crying. Even the judges were on their feet. Angelina's voice faded, but the energy in the room did not. She stood there, frozen, eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. Simon Cowell sat perfectly still. Then, slowly, he stood up, his face filled with awe. He looked at her for a long moment before finally speaking. "Angelina," he said, "I've been doing this a long time. I've heard many voices, but what you just did, that was extraordinary. You are 10 years old, and yet, you sang like you've lived 100 lifetimes. That was not just singing, that was storytelling through music." The crowd roared. Heidi Klum wiped her eyes. "You made me cry," she said softly. "There's something in your voice that goes straight to the heart. You are an angel, truly." Howie smiled, shaking his head in disbelief. "I can't believe that came out of someone so tiny." You're proof that the biggest voices come in the smallest packages. Sofia Vergara leaned forward, beaming. You're not just talented, Amor, you're special. You were born for this stage. Angelina looked overwhelmed, tears glistening in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Simon looked at the other judges, then back at Angelina. The crowd began to chant, golden buzzer. Golden buzzer. He stared at the button in front of him. Then he looked at Angelina again. You said something earlier, he said. You said you wanted people to feel something. He paused, his voice softening. Well, I think everyone here tonight felt something. The audience went wild. Simon smiled, a real, heartfelt smile, and pressed the golden buzzer. The sound of the buzzer exploded through the theater. Golden confetti burst from the ceiling, raining down on the little girl as she covered her mouth, sobbing uncontrollably. Her parents ran onto the stage, tears streaming down their faces as they hugged her tightly. Simon walked over, gave her a gentle hug, and whispered something only she could hear, never stop singing. It was one of those rare moments that everyone who watched would remember forever, a moment when talent, emotion, and heart combined into something unforgettable. The video of Angelina's performance spread across the internet like wildfire. Within hours, millions had watched it. Comments flooded social media. I've never cried from an AGT performance before. This little girl is a gift from heaven. Simon looked genuinely moved. That says it all. People around the world began searching her name, replaying her performance over and over, sharing it with friends, family, and anyone who needed a reminder that miracles still exist. But behind that one performance was a story, one that very few knew. Angelina grew up in a small town in the Philippines. Her father was a fisherman, her mother sold food at the local market. They didn't have much, but they had love. And from the time Angelina was 3 years old, she loved to sing. She would hum lullabies to herself as her mother cooked, or sing to the waves when her father returned from sea. Her parents noticed something early on. Her voice wasn't ordinary. Even as a child, she had control, tone, and emotion far beyond her years. But formal music lessons were a luxury they couldn't afford. So her mother did something extraordinary. She borrowed an old phone, downloaded opera performances from YouTube, and every night, she and Angelina would sit together, watching, listening, and learning. Angelina practiced every day. She didn't have a teacher, but she had determination. She mimicked the greats, Maria Callas, Sarah Brightman, Andrea Bocelli. Slowly, she began to find her own sound. When she sang at local events, people would stop what they were doing and listen. Some said her voice was a blessing. Others said she was born with a gift meant to inspire. But life wasn't easy. There were days when they didn't have enough food, nights when the electricity went out, and times when Angelina doubted herself. One evening, her mother found her sitting outside, looking at the stars. "Mama," she whispered, "do you think someone like me can really make it? I'm just a small girl from a small town." Her mother smiled softly. "The stars you see up there, Anik, they're the same stars people see in America, in London, in the whole world. Remember, it doesn't matter where you come from, it matters what shines inside you." Those words stayed with her. A few years later, a local foundation sponsored her to audition for a talent show in Manila. She won. One of the judges, a producer visiting from Los Angeles, was so impressed that he invited her to try out for America's Got Talent. It sounded impossible. Her family couldn't afford the trip. But the community came together. People donated, neighbors sold snacks, her school raised funds, and soon, they had enough for tickets. When they landed in America, it was the first time Angelina had ever been on a plane. Everything was new, overwhelming, and exciting. But when she walked onto that stage, all that nervousness melted away. It was her moment, the culmination of every dream, every prayer, every sleepless night of practice. After her golden buzzer performance, her life changed overnight. She was invited to perform on talk shows, music events, and even at charity galas. People wanted to hear the girl with the angelic voice. But what made her truly special wasn't just her talent, it was her humility. Even as fame grew, she never forgot her roots. She continued sending money back home to her village, helping rebuild the school where she first sang in front of classmates. One touching story came months later when a reporter asked her, "What's the first thing you did after winning the golden buzzer?" Angelina smiled shyly and said, "I called my mama." She cried. "Then I told her, 'Mama, we did it.'" As the competition went on, Angelina's performances only grew more powerful. In the semifinals, she performed, Nessun Dorma, and her voice reached notes so pure that people in the audience literally wept. Even Simon had tears in his eyes, something few had ever seen before. By the time the finale arrived, Angelina had become a global sensation. She stood on the stage, surrounded by stars, cameras flashing, millions watching from home. She sang her heart out once again, a song about hope and courage, and though she didn't win the top prize, she won something far greater, the world's heart. Simon later said in an interview, "There are moments that remind us why we do this show. That little girl, she reminded me that music can change lives. She reminded me of the power of pure talent, unfiltered and full of heart." Angelina returned to the Philippines as a hero. Her small hometown welcomed her with flowers, banners, and cheers. She sang for the people who had supported her all along, her golden confetti now a symbol of every dream that seemed too far to reach but wasn't. She went on to record her first album, a mix of classical and modern songs, each filled with emotion and grace. And yet, she always made time for the children back home, visiting schools, singing for charity, and reminding them, "Don't let fear stop you. You don't need to be big to do big things." Years later, when she was interviewed again, she was asked what she remembered most about that day on America's Got Talent. She smiled softly and said, "I remember Simon's eyes. He looked at me like he believed in me. And for a girl who grew up doubting if anyone would ever hear her voice, that meant everything." Her story became an inspiration not only to singers but to dreamers everywhere. People from all around the world wrote letters saying she gave them hope, that her courage helped them chase their own dreams. Even Simon Cowell, who rarely shows emotion, called her performance one of the defining moments in AGT history. And so, from a small fishing village in the Philippines to the biggest talent stage in the world, a little girl with a giant heart and a golden voice proved that no dream is too far, no voice too small, and no dreamer too young. Her journey continues, and every time she sings, the world listens, remembers, and feels. Because sometimes, all it takes is one brave child, one voice that dares to rise, and one golden moment that changes everything. And that is the story of the 10-year-old Filipino opera singer who stunned Simon Cowell, touched millions of hearts, and turned her dream into a miracle that will never be forgotten.